June 22nd, 1941, just before dawn. Along the vast western border of the Soviet Union, an unnatural silence hangs in the air. In the darkness, tank engines idle quietly. Artillery crews stand frozen in position, and millions of soldiers wait, without speaking. Stretching across hundreds of kilometers, the German army is poised to unleash what will become the largest invasion in human history. Its code name is Operation Barbarossa. Adolf Hitler is convinced that this moment will define his legacy. In his mind, the Soviet Union is not a true superpower, but a fragile structure held together by fear and propaganda. He believes the Red Army has already been weakened beyond recovery by political purges, poor leadership, and low morale. The war, he insists, will be short. One decisive blow, one overwhelming strike, and the Soviet state will collapse under its own weight. Hitler is certain that Germany will win before winter arrives. Across the border, in Moscow, Joseph Stalin faces a choice that will haunt the Soviet Union for years to come. For weeks, intelligence reports have arrived from multiple sources, all warning of an imminent German attack. Soviet spies in Berlin, British intelligence officers, and even Stalin's own generals deliver the same message: the invasion is coming. Stalin refuses to accept it. He believes Hitler will not risk a war on two fronts. He suspects foreign powers are attempting to manipulate him into making the first move. More than anything, he fears provocation. As a result, Stalin orders Soviet forces to remain passive, instructing commanders not to take any action that might give Germany an excuse to attack. The consequences of this hesitation are devastating. Soviet aircraft remain parked in tight formations on open airfields. Defensive positions along the border are unfinished. Entire frontline units are caught unprepared, unaware that they are standing directly in the path of a massive offensive. Meanwhile, on the German side, confidence turns into arrogance. The Wehrmacht has defeated Poland with speed and precision. France has fallen in a matter of weeks. Much of Europe now lies under Nazi control, and German officers believe they are witnessing the birth of a new world order. Many write home, convinced the campaign in the East will be little more than a final step toward total victory. Few of them understand the scale of what lies ahead. At exactly 3:15 in the morning, the silence is shattered. German artillery opens fire along the entire front. Bombers cross the border, striking airfields, railways, and command centers in carefully coordinated waves. Soviet defenses are hit before many soldiers even realize the war has begun. Operation Barbarossa is now in motion, and in that single moment, World War II enters a new and far more brutal phase, one that will decide the fate of millions and reshape the course of history forever. Operation Barbarossa was not a spontaneous decision. It was the result of months of planning, ambition, and dangerous overconfidence. Adolf Hitler believed he was about to achieve what no European conqueror had ever accomplished: the complete destruction of the Soviet Union in a single, decisive campaign. At the heart of Hitler's strategy was speed. The German High Command was ordered to avoid a long war at all costs. The Red Army had to be destroyed near the border before it could retreat deep into Soviet territory. If Moscow fell quickly, Hitler believed, the Soviet state would collapse politically and psychologically. To carry out this vision, the German invasion force was divided into 3 massive formations, each with a clear and aggressive objective. In the north, Army Group North was tasked with advancing through the Baltic states and capturing Leningrad. The city was not only a major industrial center, but also a powerful symbol of Soviet resistance. Hitler believed that its fall would deal a devastating blow to Soviet morale and open the path toward complete control of the Baltic region. At the center of the invasion stood Army Group Center, the strongest and most important formation. Its objective was Moscow itself. This force contained the majority of Germany's armored divisions, the sharp edge of the Blitzkrieg. The plan was simple and ruthless. Encircle Soviet armies near the border, destroy them quickly, and then drive straight toward the Soviet capital. In the south, Army Group South was ordered to advance into Ukraine. This region was critical to Hitler's long-term vision. Ukraine's vast agricultural lands and industrial resources were seen as essential to sustaining the German war machine. Control of the South would also deprive the Soviet Union of food, fuel, and manpower. On paper, the plan appeared flawless. The German army had more experience, better coordination, and superior tactics. Its officers trusted the Blitzkrieg doctrine, a method of warfare based on speed, surprise, and overwhelming force. Tanks, aircraft, and infantry would strike together, breaking enemy lines before they had time to react. Yet, beneath the confidence lay a fatal assumption. German planners believed the Soviet Union could be defeated in a matter of weeks. They underestimated the size of the Red Army, the resilience of Soviet industry, and the ability of the Soviet state to absorb catastrophic losses and continue fighting. Logistics were treated as a secondary concern. Supplies, fuel, and winter equipment were planned only for a short campaign. Even some German generals expressed quiet doubts. They warned that the distances were too vast, the infrastructure too poor, and the enemy too unpredictable, but Hitler dismissed these concerns. Victory, he believed, was inevitable. As the invasion began, early results seemed to confirm his faith. Entire Soviet divisions were caught off guard. Communication collapsed. Command structures disintegrated. German armored units advanced at breathtaking speed, capturing thousands of prisoners and vast quantities of equipment. To the outside world, it appeared as though the Soviet Union was on the brink of destruction. But this apparent success hid a deeper problem. The Red Army was retreating, not surrendering. Soviet forces were being destroyed, but they were buying time. Behind the front lines, factories were being dismantled and moved east. New armies were forming. The Soviet state was beginning to adapt. Unknowingly, Hitler had committed Germany to a war of attrition it could never afford. Operation Barbarossa was no longer just an invasion. It was becoming a test of endurance, ideology, and survival, and the outcome was far from decided. In the opening days of Operation Barbarossa, the scale of destruction is overwhelming. The German assault moves with a speed and coordination the Soviet Union has never faced before. Entire front lines collapse within hours. Communications are cut, headquarters destroyed, en commandaire, left without orders or information. For many Soviet soldiers, the war begins without warning. German bombers strike airfields at dawn, destroying hundreds of Soviet aircraft on the ground before they can even take off. Armored columns push deep into enemy territory, bypassing resistance and racing toward strategic crossroads. Infantry divisions follow, sealing off escape routes and tightening the noose. This is Blitzkrieg at its most brutal. Soviet units fight bravely in many places, but confusion dominates the battlefield. Orders are unclear or contradictory. Some commanders wait for permission that never arrives. Others retreat on their own initiative, only to be accused later of cowardice or treason. In the chaos, entire armies become isolated from one another. Within the first week, massive encirclements begin to form. Near Minsk, German forces trap hundreds of thousands of Red Army soldiers. Roads are choked with refugees, abandoned equipment, and retreating troops. Ammunition runs out. Food disappears. Medical supplies are non-existent. Surrounded and without support, many Soviet units have no choice but to surrender. Columns of prisoners stretch for kilometers. German soldiers are stunned by the numbers. They believe the war is already won. Some officers report that the Soviet Union has lost its entire Western Army. Newspapers in Germany speak openly of final victory and the imminent collapse of Bolshevism. Yet, beneath the surface, a different reality is emerging. Not all Soviet forces surrender. In forests, villages, and ruined towns, isolated groups continue to fight. Some break out of encirclements at night. Others form the early of partisan resistance, attacking German supply lines and disappearing into the landscape. These small acts of defiance go largely unnoticed, but they will grow in importance with time. Meanwhile, the cost of the invasion begins to reveal itself. German units advance so quickly that supply lines stretch dangerously thin. Fuel trucks struggle to keep up with armored spearheads. Roads turn to dust under constant movement, choking engines and slowing progress. Equipment breaks down, and replacement parts are often days or weeks away. The deeper the Germans push, the more the vastness of the Soviet Union becomes their enemy. By July, new and larger encirclements occur at Smolensk. Once again, Soviet armies are trapped and destroyed. Once again, the numbers are staggering. Bepicting. Something is different. The Red Army is learning. Resistance fin. Too costly to appear. The pace of the German advance starts to slow. Hitler and the German High Command interpret this as proof of success. They believe they are destroying the Soviet Union piece by piece. What they fail to see is that the Red Army is not collapsing, it is transforming. Behind the front lines, factories are being evacuated eastward beyond the reach of German bombers. Millions of civilians are mobilized. New divisions are formed with incredible speed, often sent into battle with minimal training but unbreakable determination. The early weeks of Barbarossa deliver a shock unlike anything the world has ever seen. Millions are killed, wounded, or captured in a matter of weeks. Entire regions are overrun. For the Soviet Union, it is a fight for survival. For Germany, it appears to be the final step toward victory. But history is already turning. What looks like total triumph is, in reality, the beginning of a war that Germany cannot win. By late summer of 1941, Operation Barbarossa stands at a critical crossroads. On the surface, Germany appears unstoppable. Millions of Soviet soldiers have been killed or captured, and vast territories lie under German control. Yet beneath this apparent success, time is slipping away. For the German High Command, the central question is clear: where to strike next? Many senior generals believe the answer is Moscow. The Soviet capital is not only the political heart of the nation, but also the center of its railway, network, and communications. If Moscow falls, they argue, the Soviet Union will be unable to coordinate its defenses. The war, they believe, can still be won before winter, but Adolf Hitler disagrees. Hitler's priorities are ideological and economic rather than strategic. He becomes increasingly obsessed with the South, particularly Ukraine and the Caucasus. These regions promise food, oil, and raw materials, resources Hitler believes are essential for Germany's long-term survival. Moscow, in his view, is merely a symbol. This disagreement leads to one of the most consequential decisions of the entire war. Instead of allowing Army Group Center to continue its advance toward Moscow, Hitler orders its armored units to be diverted north and south. Tanks that should be driving east are redirected to support operations around Leningrad and Ukraine. The momentum that Blitzkrieg depends upon is broken. The results are mixed but costly. In Ukraine, German forces achieve one of the largest encirclements in history near Kiev. Hundreds of thousands of Soviet soldiers are captured. On paper, it is a stunning victory. Yet it comes at a terrible price. Time, weeks pass, summer fades. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union uses this precious time to recover. Fresh divisions are rushed to defend Moscow. Defensive lines are strengthened. Factories continue to operate far from the front. The Red Army, though battered, refuses to collapse. By the time Hitler allows the renewed push toward Moscow, it is already October. The German offensive, now known as Operation Typhoon, begins under far worse conditions than planned. Autumn rains turn roads into rivers of mud, vehicles bog down. Supply trucks cannot reach the front. Soldiers march exhausted, cold, and increasingly aware that the war is far from over. The Soviet defense stiffens with every kilometer. Newly arrived troops, many from Siberia, take up positions around the capital. Unlike earlier units, these soldiers are well equipped for winter warfare and determined to hold the line at any cost. German advance is slow to a crawl, casualties mount. The Blitzkrieg has lost its speed. Hitler responds not by adjusting strategy, but by tightening control. He increasingly overrides his generals, forbidding retreats and demanding absolute obedience. Flexibility, once a strength of the German army, disappears. Units are ordered to hold positions that cannot be supplied or defended. What began as a campaign of movement is turning into a war of exhaustion. The fatal mistake of Barbarossa is now clear. Germany has attempted to fight too many battles at once, across distances too vast, against an enemy willing to sacrifice everything. By splitting focus between Moscow, Ukraine, and Leningrad, Hitler ensures that none can be decisively defeated in time. Winter is approaching, and with it comes a challenge the German army is not prepared to face. By November 1941, the illusion of a quick victory is gone. The German army stands at the gates of Moscow, exhausted, undersupplied, and dangerously exposed. What was supposed to be a short summer campaign has dragged on far beyond its limits. And now the environment itself turns against the invaders. The first snow falls silently across the battlefield. For German soldiers, winter comes as a shock. Many are still wearing summer uniforms. Winter, coats, gloves, and insulated boots are in short supply or non-existent. Weapons malfunction as oil freezes inside rifles and machine guns. Vehicles refuse to start in the brutal cold. At night, temperatures plunge far below freezing. Turning foxholes into death traps. Cold is no longer an inconvenience. It y en est mis. Supply lines, already stretched thin, begin to collapse. Trucks are stranded in frozen mud or buried under snow. Fuel shortages become critical. Artillery shells cannot be delivered. Food rations are reduced. Morale begins to crumble as soldiers realize they are trapped in a war that no longer follows any plan they recognize. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union is ready. Unlike the Germans, Soviet forces have prepared for winter warfare. New divisions, many transferred from Siberia, arrive equipped with white camouflage, winter clothing, and skis. These troops are trained to fight in extreme cold, and they bring with them a renewed sense of confidence. En Décembre 5, 1941, the Red Army strikes back. The Soviet counteroffensive around Moscow comes as a complete surprise to the German High Command. Exhausted German units are pushed back for the first time since the invasion began. Positions thought to be secure collapse under relentless pressure. In some sectors, the Germans retreat dozens of kilometers in a matter of days. Hitler reacts with fury. He forbids any further withdrawals, ordering his armies to stand and fight where they are. The Horde prevents total collapse in some areas, but it also traps countless units in exposed positions. Frostbite claims more casualties than enemy fire. Thousands of soldiers lose fingers, toes, and limbs to the cold. For the first time, the German army is fighting not for victory, but for survival. The psychological impact is immense. The myth of German invincibility shatters. Across occupied Europe, resistance movements take hope. Within the Soviet Union, morale soars. The Red Army has not only survived, it has proven it can defeat the Wehrmacht. Operation Barbarossa has failed in its primary objective. Moscow still stands. The war in the East has become something far more dangerous than Hitler ever imagined. It is now a war of attrition, a struggle in which industrial power, manpower, and endurance will decide the outcome. And Germany, facing the full weight of the Soviet Union, is running out of all three. Winter tightens its grip. The tide of history has turned. Operation Barbarossa was meant to be the final act of German dominance in Europe. Instead, it became the moment when Nazi Germany began its irreversible decline. By the end of 1941, the reality is impossible to deny. The Soviet Union has not collapsed. Moscow has not fallen. The Red Army, once dismissed as weak and disorganized, has survived the most devastating invasion in history and emerged stronger, harder, and more determined than ever. The failure of Barbarossa is not caused by a single mistake, but by a chain of fatal miscalculations. Hitler underestimated his enemy. He believed the Soviet state would crumble under pressure ignoring its vast manpower, industrial potential, and ability to adapt. He underestimated geography, assuming speed could overcome distance. He underestimated winter, believing ideology and willpower could replace preparation and logistics. Most dangerously, he underestimated time. Every week, Barbarossa dragged on weakened Germany and strengthened the Soviet Union. While German forces bled at the front, Soviet factories beyond the Ural Mountains worked day and night. Entire industries were rebuilt from scratch. Tanks, aircraft, and artillery rolled off assembly lines faster than Germany could destroy them. The war had become one of production and endurance. Germany was unprepared for such a struggle. By forcing his armies to fight without retreat, Hitler turned flexibility into rigidity. Tactical brilliance was sacrificed for ideological stubbornness. Losses that could have been avoided became permanent. Experienced soldiers and officers, the backbone of the Wehrmacht, were gone forever. Barbarossa also reshaped the global war. The Eastern Front became the central battlefield of World War II, consuming the majority of German resources and manpower. From this moment on, Germany would never again regain the strategic initiative. Every major defeat that followed, Stalingrad, Kursk, the long retreat toward Berlin, traced its roots back to the failure of Barbarossa. For the Soviet Union, survival transformed into confidence. The victory before Moscow proved that the Wehrmacht could be beaten. It forged a hardened military, leadership, and a population willing to endure unimaginable suffering for ultimate victory. The cost was staggering. Millions of soldiers and civilians were dead. Entire regions lay in ruins. Barbarossa unleashed a war of annihilation, one marked by brutality, ideology, and mass destruction, on an unprecedented scale. Its scars would shape Eastern Europe for generations. When historians look back, Operation Barbarossa stands as a warning. It shows what happens when ambition blinds strategy, when ideology replaces realism, and when leaders mistake early success for inevitable victory. It was the moment Germany crossed a line from which there was no return. The invasion that was supposed to end the war instead ensured that Germany would lose it. And from the frozen fields outside Moscow, the road now leads forward to Stalingrad, to total war, and to the final collapse of the Third Reich.